I can't help it. It just smells so good. Alright, let's get to the point. Well, I'm super excited that you are interested in either becoming a gardener or you just want some tips and tricks. Maybe not tricks, but tips for sure. And let's enjoy this wind. It is almost the end of 2020 and I've learned quite a few things this entire year and I'm so excited to share them with you. Towards the end of the video, I'm going to add some recommendations for books, and I will link right here the video that I just created on some gift ideas for some tools that you might need. Those are all things that I use, so it's either for yourself or for a gift. And I've said this a few times, but growing your own food is the best healthcare that you can buy yourself. So I'm really proud of you for either being interested or for starting. So just so you know, it only takes one plant, just one plant to be a gardener. Yeah, that's it. And it is as easy as starting some sprouts in your kitchen, one single plant by the window, indoors, or like all of this, outdoors. I only have 2 years experience and I've done all of this, so I've learned a lot. I actually spent a lot of time researching, so maybe my 2 years is actually considered more, I don't know. But last year I started with some smart pots and it grew into all of this. One of the things that I love the most is how you learn to appreciate your food on another level. You see farmers differently, you actually appreciate your food by the time that it started to grow. So before, I had no idea how a lot of these fruits and vegetables grew. Now actually putting them on the ground and waiting patiently for them, I've learned to appreciate every single day of growth. So again, I'm so excited. So let's get started. First thing is, you have to know your sun's location. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So the best location for your garden is the south, facing the south. So what that means is, let me show you over here in my garden. As you enter the vegetable garden, you see that fence corner right there? That is actually my south side. This isn't necessarily the back of the house, it is the corner of the house, but it seems to work perfectly for this corner. I didn't know that to begin with. I actually did that by growing last year and figuring out the sun that way. But just so that you know, my east side is on that side. So if my sun rises on the east, all of this, and if I turn over, all of this always gets sun, and that over there is the west side. So basically the sun is just coming over all of the beds, but that is only during spring, summer, fall. Towards the winter, which is getting towards more the end of fall, the sun is going to change. The sun is actually going to change throughout the entire year, but you'll see a big difference on the location. So this is where the original east was. Now the sun is rising over here on this side, which is closer to my south side during the summer. I don't want to confuse you. I just wanted you to know that the sun will move from the location. So if you're planting your garden in the fall, just make sure you watch out for shaded areas that weren't there in the summer. For example, I have my neighbor's house blocking the sun, but I just want you to see the sun is right here and the fence is there, the house is there. I get sun up until this area right now, and then all this is pretty much shaded most of the day. And you can see what is getting sunlight right now, and right now we're in the afternoon, so you can see that only the tall plants are going to get sun right now. Today is a cloudy day, so it's going to be more shaded than normal, but half of these beds receive shade pretty much all day long. So my next point is, if you're just now starting, I would recommend starting with some smart pots, some pots that you can move. I'll show you what my smart pots look like. They will last a couple years, but it's a good way to move things around easily. I have quite a few from last year. You can tell they are worn out, but they are really good smart pots. These are from Amazon. I will link them, but basically I can just pick and move them. So if this is getting shade half the day, I'm just going to pull it forward so I can get the most sun. Or I can easily, I have the drip system, so it's kind of holding it in place, but I can easily move it and turn it just so that it gets more sun. I really recommend anything like that to begin with, because you don't want to have a set garden and you didn't realize the sun played a huge factor, because it is the #1 thing you have to consider is your daylight. Now that the cloud moved out of the way, I wanted you to see how much sunlight all of these beds receive. We are in the fall right now, so also keep in mind that we have much shorter days, so we're not going to get as much sun as we possibly can, especially if your plants are shaded. Now once you determine your sun and your daylight, or if you're experimenting, you're going to move things around, now you want to decide how much shade and how much sun the locations of your garden have, because you have to plant certain plants there. Right now I'm planting the spring, so I know that once the sun shifts and starts rising in the east, those two beds over there are going to get a lot of shade. These beds that have shade right now, and remember right now it's because it's cloudy, but half of these are shaded and half is not. But this is the plant that gets the most sun, and it also gets really, really windy here. So I learned that this year. Next year I have to put plants that are short and won't break off easily. I had a few plants that snapped in these two beds, and I don't want that to happen again. These two beds are shaded by the house all the way through maybe about noon during the day in the summer. I know that these beds are full sun beds just in the summer, and in the fall they receive sunlight all day long, so which is really good. So if you have an area that doesn't get morning sun but gets noon till evening sun, that is plenty. You need about 8 hours for a full sun plant to thrive in those areas. These two beds right here receive a lot of shade, but they're probably, maybe that one is 4 hours, this one is 6 hours sunlight, and these are full sun. And I've learned that they're full sun throughout the entire year, even though they do get shade in the evening, but because they receive morning and afternoon daylight, the equivalents to the 8 hours. This bed right here gets full sun 24/7 all day long, whether spring, summer, fall, because it receives sunlight from all directions. And in the summer it gets really heavy here, so I need really heat tolerant plants in these areas right here. I've learned all of this with 1 year, so I know what to do next year. Even though I started last year was a hit and miss. I wasn't doing the full garden, so I only had this area here, and I didn't do a lot of fall. So now I have a lot more experience. I get to understand things a little bit better. We're done with the sun, but I did want to mention an easy way to figure out how plants will do with sun is really the biggest key factor is knowing your plant size. So it's either a large plant or a large fruit. They require the most sun. The greens require the least, because all you do is eat the greens. It doesn't produce fruit. They can go with 2 to 4 hours of sun. The next one would be your herbs. They do bloom, so they need a little bit more sun, right around 4 to 6 hours. Your beans, peas, your root crops, those need 6 hours of sun. And then you have your large plants, which are tomatoes, peppers, melons. Those need 8 to more hours of sun. Now the next thing is your soil. That is the #1 most important thing that you can give your plants is nutrition. If they have bad soil or no nutrition or limited nutrition, they're exposed to diseases, they won't grow as well, you won't get that many blooms, your fruit will have issues, you'll have more pests. It's just endless. So invest in good soil. If you can't do this because of the cost, please invest in good soil. Good soil is composed of 4 things, in my opinion. Of what I've seen so far, it's 4 things. 4 things. The 4th one is an added bonus, but really 4 things. #1 is your compost. You have to have like 30% compost in your soil, and that is the best nutrition you can give your plants, as well as it retains your moisture. So some plants require a lot of moisture, some plants require really drained, dry soils, but your compost provides a mixture of nutrients and moisture. So then the next piece of that would be 30% of sand. You need drainage. As you're mixing all of these components, you build your best soil for your plant. So basically the best foundation. The other 30% is your topsoil. So your topsoil is basically the top 6 to 12 inches of the ground, which has all the nutrients from like leaves and decomposing animals, and anything that falls on the ground that processes there stays in that top layer, which is why it's called topsoil. You have that everywhere. And the last thing is castings. I prefer worm castings, but you can also do manure. If you do manure I don't know why that reminds me of the Jim Carrey movie. Pet Detective. Anyways, so 5% of that. If you get manure, then make sure it's aged at least 1 year, because you want all the pathogens and all that from actual like raw manure to be gone from that. So if it's aged, it's perfect. I prefer worm castings because you can actually apply as much worm castings as you want onto your soil, and it is not harmful at all, and the nitrogen level is really, really low. So manure is high nitrogen, and what that does is you get a lot of greens and not that much fruit. So that's why you only need a little bit of it. But worm castings, you can do a lot. So you get to choose what you want, or what you have, or what you can get your hands on. So those are the 2 most important things to learn as a beginner gardener. Now to the 3rd piece of it right now is to get your seeds. I honestly think that you can get seeds anywhere. Good quality seeds do matter. But to start off, just get you some seeds, whatever seeds they are, and get you different varieties so you can see how things grow in your area. Everyone has different climates, everyone has different environments, so what I suffer, you might not. For example, powdery mildew, I suffered from that a lot, and some areas are not. But that's because it is high humidity here in Texas. It's like the worst in South Texas. So I have to look for plants that maybe are resistant to powdery mildew, maybe not, or just invest in good soil. I prefer for you to really support your local garden center, so buy seeds from them. There's also plenty of seeds in your box stores, which is Lowe's, Home Depot, Target, Walmart. There's plenty of seeds there. Online, I choose Johnny Seeds, Baker Creek. They have a lot of heirloom seeds, which what that means is they have not been modified in any way, and they are ancient seeds that are from many years ago. So you have pros and cons with everything. The newer seeds, they're more resistant to things, but I still like to go back to the more organic side, more natural side. Everything depends on what you are interested in. So with the pandemic this year, you need to get your seeds now. So that's one thing to invest number one in, is get your seeds now, because you don't want to be out of stock pretty soon. I think in the next month or two, a lot of things will be out of stock. Even in your local centers, Lowe's and Home Depot, they don't keep their seeds out too long. So get your seeds first. Some of the other things you can do is get your smart pots, if that's what you're doing. I will link the Amazon ones that I purchased. I've had them for 2 years and they're still doing good. Some of them have torn a little bit. You get what you pay for. So if you get the less expensive ones, they'll last a couple years. If you get the more expensive, aka Smart Pot brand, then they're a lot thicker, so they'll last you quite a few years. And I love them, especially because they're very aerated, and they have handles. I'm not sure if you noticed, but yeah, they have handles and they're still pretty good. So once you have your seeds, you have your pots, you have your soil, and you're starting to plant some seeds, you also have to look into some mulch. You don't want your bare soil exposed. There's a lot of living microorganisms in there, and you don't want the top layer to dry out. You also want to keep that moisture for your plants, so mulch is really important. Either you get it from your leaves. If you have pine trees, you got pine needles. Those have nitrogen though. But all that serves as a good mulch. I purchased mine because I don't have my trees, they're not developed yet, so I don't have a lot of leaves. So I purchased hay or straw. You also want to make sure that those are as organic as you can get. You don't want those added chemicals in that. And the last thing that you will buy is trellises. If you're gonna do anything that vines, like your peas, your pole beans, tomatoes, cucumbers, all that requires a trellis. I didn't do any trellises this year because I did last year and I wanted to see the difference. No trellis versus trellises. I think I need some trellises. So I'm going to purchase that this year, but you can do, everyone starts off with the ones that you can get at your local hardware store, which is your typical tomato cages. You want to get the largest ones for your large plants, but they are flimsy. So if you have high winds, they're not that great unless you double them or you stick them down really good. There's a lot of online resources to build your own trellises. I will probably buy a couple and maybe create my own, but I really do think that you need your trellises. This is a trellis that I bought from Lowe's, and it is cedar, but they are stapled, so the grip isn't that great. And this is what happens. So after 1 year of use, they came apart, and I discovered I had termites, and the termites were eating the bottom of it. That's another example of a trellis. I have another thing to remind you of. As a beginner gardener, you will kill your plants. They will die. So if you want one tomato plant, plant two. Just in case. That's part of it. I hope it doesn't discourage you. You will kill your plants, 100%. They will get pests. They will not grow, which means aka stunt growth. They will go through everything because you're learning. I did all of that, and I'm still gonna do it forever because I don't know everything. We're not gonna know everything. So don't be discouraged, but know 100% they will die. You will kill them. Some things you will sacrifice is time. At the beginning, you're gonna invest some time in it, but I guarantee you that is one of the best times you're gonna spend outside is in your garden. I love to come out here on a daily basis. You'll spend about 10, maybe 30 minutes. I spend the 30 minutes because I have a large garden, but 10 minutes you come out and just inspect your garden. Inspect your plants, just admire them. And one day you have you have growth like you wouldn't believe. It is pretty crazy, and you want to admire that. You want to see your little bitty seeds turn into this ginormous plant. I didn't plant these from seeds. I did those in here. Those are strawberries. These I got from my local garden center. But look what's happening. Tiny seeds, because you can see them on the strawberries, and now I'm getting strawberries. You're gonna love it. I know it for sure. You're gonna love seeing this, especially like this one right here. It's one seed, and look, I admire it every single day. It's like 10 or 12 feet tall. On the expensive side, you will spend some money. It can be expensive, especially if you're like me and you just want to keep adding, but you also have options to save money. For example, maybe you can't buy your compost, but you can make it from your own stuff. So leaves, kitchen scraps, and all that good stuff that comes from the outdoors, you can compost it. It will take some time, but you can compost it. There are easy and fast ways to do it. You can also compost in your smart pots. Those are smaller, and you can kind of just do your thing there, add some dry leaves, add some kitchen scraps, and kind of lasagna it together, and within a couple months you'll have some compost. It won't be full 100% compost, but it will finish the process in your garden beds and will add so many nutrients. The nutrients you need to keep all those little pests away and hopefully keep your greens green. Another thing is that you can buy your own worm farm, and that's anywhere between $100 $150. You can buy yourself a little worm farm. They have those on Amazon, and you put your kitchen scraps there, and your worms create your worm castings. I love worm castings. Last year I used them a lot. This year I wanted to not use as much just to see the difference, and it's a big difference. So worm castings are great. A bag of worm castings is expensive, but if you have your little worm farm, you can have as many as you want with worm casting tea. Not the poop, but the urine. I don't want to make this too long because I want things to be simple for you. So I'm going to show you the books that I was talking to you about. I love Callie Kim. She just came out with this book this year. I think it was this year. And she explains everything detail by detail with the most economic way to garden, which I really love. The Kitchen Garden Revival, I found her today. This is Nicole, and she really goes by the raised bed method. So building the beds or finding someone local that can help you build your raised beds and help you plant your garden, she is the way to go. But if you don't do it that way, she has a lot of good information on the garden itself that you can really use, and I'll link all of these. You can find them on Amazon. This one is one of the books that I used a lot on pests and diseases. You don't really have to worry about them really until you get more of the summer side of things. Once the summer comes, you really have to be concerned with the pests. And then this one is an overall, like, really Bible of everything, and it gives you every type of way to grow a garden. And then in the back it actually gives you information about specific fruits and vegetables. All of this is on strawberries, like everything. You have a lot of information here, like what to do with manure, nitrogen, and all that good stuff. That's the way to go. So these 4 books are really good books to have. I highly recommend them. Just because I don't want to leave this out, you can grow or start your seeds indoors if you have a short growing season. You do need some grow lights, some trays, and stuff like that, and you need space in your house near a window if you don't have grow lights. But I will say that it is much easier and less discouraging, because that might be a little complicated and time consuming. to go to your local garden center and see what they already have. So what you don't have to grow, maybe it's a little bit more expensive, but you can get started with some things, and then other things you start from seed. I really do hope that this was helpful, and everyone asks me questions about beginner gardener all the time, so maybe you guys like this. If not, it's okay. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a happy